Hey you, how's it going? My name is Ruby Price and today I'm going to do something I don't normally do. So I've heard a lot about the sort of things that get said on the website Mumsnet, and I thought today what I would do is just sort of troll through the forums and have a look and sort of react and respond to the things that are being said on Mumsnet, because Mumsnet has a bit of a reputation within the trans community and it's not a very good one. Obviously, I don't suggest that you go looking for transphobia online, and I especially don't suggest that you engage with transphobia online, because as we all know, this sort of transphobia that I'm going to be looking for is not positive. It's not something you can have a reasoned debate with. It's not something that you can make go away purely by commenting on it. That's not to say transphobia shouldn't be challenged, of course. I think transphobia should be challenged, but the kind of people who do send out this kind of transphobia aren't willing to negotiate on this matter. So therefore, you're just wasting your breath. So what I've done, I found a couple of threads and I'm going to, just have a scroll through, and I guess we'll see, how it develops from there. So as we see here, we've already come across something on the actual post. I work with someone that is a trans activist, and whilst I support their right to identify as they wish, I don't subscribe to the philosophy that you should be able to change your biological sex on your birth certificate, or that gender stereotypes define who you are as a person. I really like this person, but I struggle with their outspoken views. For example, that trans women should participate in women's sport, and to say otherwise is hateful. That some women have penises, that she says that she is a lesbian, they are a trans woman in a relationship with a biological woman, and trying to get us to add pronouns to our emails. I haven't said anything, but I do like her, and I am struggling with these outspoken views, so at odds with my own beliefs and common sense. I don't want to add sodding pronouns to my email. Is there any way of politely refuting any of this stuff, or do I have to sit and smile and nod along? So the very first post, exactly what I was expecting, to be honest. Obviously it's very problematic. I obviously fully, disagree with everything that's said in this post. I like the fact that this person is quite clearly viewing this person as a woman though. They use the correct pronouns, which I wasn't expecting. But again, they do sort of, they are being rather transphobic in a sense in this thing, because they say that they disagree with the statement that some women have penises, and to say anything different would go against my own view. But if I hadn't had surgery yet, that wouldn't make me any less of a woman. That would just mean that I don't have a vagina yet. But does that invalidate my gender identity? As far as I'm concerned, no. The problem with things like this is, how do you rationalise gender versus sex? And how do you, get that to come across in a way that people who aren't as knowledgeable, or people who don't quite know the context of everything, understand it the way that we as trans people are trying to put it across? And obviously, pronouns. Pronouns are important. Even for people who are cisgender, pronouns can be vital, because we don't all appear as our gender identity. Some people prefer to look androgynous, yet they are very, very decidedly female, and having your pronouns added to your emails, it just makes it a little bit easier too, to be honest. What happens if you have a gender neutral name like Ashley? By including your pronouns in an email, someone who receives this email isn't going to be like, "Dear Sir, Madam." They can just be, by including their pronouns, they know how you want to be received, whether you're cis or whether you're trans. Enough said. Found a response to that is pretty, again, problematic. They sound like a typical misogynistic asshole. I'm a tetchy fucker, so I'd probably steer the conversation around to the lack of rights for many women/girls. Trans people being accepted as their gender doesn't invalidate any of the struggles of, anyone else. Just a point. Pick a subject every time they start, such as, did you see the documentary the other night about those poor wee girls that are held down screaming while their genitalia is horrifically damaged? Again, accepting trans people in the workplace doesn't nullify the fact that FGM exists. These atrocities will exist whether you accept trans people in the workplace or not. Then, did you see that program about the period huts where so many poor women die from the cold or snake bites? Isn't it horrific? Yeah, it is pretty horrific, to be honest. Every time your co-worker tries to bully you into accepting their propaganda, women and girls suffer because of their sex and can never identify out of that. Here's the thing. Everything this comment says is true. There are girls, having their genitalia damaged. There are boys having their genitalia damaged. There are trans people having their genitalia forcibly damaged. There are women dying from the cold. There are, women dying from snake bites. And as I've been saying, accepting trans people and validating them within their gender identity doesn't detract from that. From my experience, identifying as a woman obviously then doesn't give me access to the victimization that, women face and the oppression that women face. But here's the thing. As a trans woman, I pass, which means that I then also take on some of the oppression that women take. If a man perceives me as female and he's a misogynistic prick, until he clocks me, which might not happen, until he clocks me, I am as much of a target for his misogyny as any cis woman. I think that's enough of that post. And that's only a couple of responses. Okay, so I found a post that actually starts off really positively. This is a surprisingly positive post to be posted as the start of a thread in Mumsnet. I am an old school campaigning, hard-bitten feminist and have been since before half the people on here were born. I understand the feminist anti-trans argument, but I find all of it to be empty of any basis in reality. Trans people aren't lurking in changing rooms. Trans people aren't after your kids or trying to undermine your own femininity. They are having a very hard time in life. I know you can cite a handful of examples, but then there are always a handful of examples of anything. One Karen White does not mean you write off all trans people as criminals. I would say to you to get to know an actual trans person and see what the reality is, except that I wouldn't want any vulnerable person subjected to this. You also probably do already know a trans person somewhere in your life, but most don't wear a badge to tell you that because it's actually none of your business what clothes or pronouns someone chooses to use. Yes, exactly. The first reply is already interesting. My issue is not with trans people, it's the ideology which keeps saying that we are hateful if we mention the word woman. No one is banning the word woman! I don't get where this has come from. Another post. We're feminists who want to talk about how our safe spaces are being eroded and how we can't speak up for ourselves. We won't be silenced. Here's the thing. I don't see the argument here about how safe spaces are being eroded. Under the 2010 Equality Act, trans people can use the services that are designated for their gender identity, with a few exceptions. Trans women can use female toilets. Trans men who, the feminists on places like Mumsnet never seem to take into account, can use the male toilets. I'm not sure why they'd want to. Male toilets are disgusting. But, they can. Trans people are allowed to use these toilets, and that's often what this argument comes back down to. They're allowed to use services designated for women, and the argument that they're not allowed to speak up for themselves. There are anti-trans people in the media almost every week arguing about how gender-critical and TERF people aren't allowed to talk about the trans issue whilst talking about the trans issue. Open your fucking eyes! Well, this is a fun one. I don't know how close you are, as this is a very sensitive issue, but has he considered what effect medical transition will have on his love life? For a start, the OP on this post is talking about their trans daughter, but with this being Mumsnet, it's full of misgendering, and they're using male pronouns and the term son and stuff like that. But from now on, I'm going to use the female pronouns because that's the way I assume this person is wanting to be referenced based on the context that I've been given, and it would feel wrong to not do that. And I guess if it sticks it to Mumsnet, it's all good. But yeah, about someone's love life. Here's the thing, when someone is trans, their love life is the least of their worries. Or at least in my experience. Your child is very much trying to come to terms with their own body. The last thing they're going to be thinking about is engaging in sexual activities with someone else. Having said that, some trans people very much get on with their love lives. This is not something those encouraging young people to transition are truthful about. Transition dramatically reduces your pool of potential partners, but this is not necessarily obvious to inexperienced and naive young people. How does it dramatically reduce the pool of potential partners? Please answer me this. Because if this pool of potential partners is decreasing because they don't want to date trans people, then why would you want to be dating them in the first place? You would be surprised how many people are actually entirely open to the idea of dating trans people. Whether that's because they are trans people, in which case stay away is my advice, or whether it's purely just because they just see the person that they are potentially dating. It's got nothing to do with what's between their legs and their head. It's just, dating, really. And I am being truthful about that. Yes, I've had some troubles with dating, but at the same time, all the people who I would have potentially removed from my potential pool of, you know, people to date, apparently, all of those people I didn't want in the first place, so yeah. Is there any real difference between trans rights activists and men's rights activists, other than trans rights activists being a subset of men's rights activists? Well, I think it's obvious that I fully disagree with this statement. MRAs, from an outsider's perspective, don't tend to do a lot of MRA, whereas trans rights activists, from my perspective, tend to do a lot of activism for trans rights. Don't get me wrong, there is very much a need for a men's rights activist movement, and that's purely because the current men's rights activist movement tend to jump onto the back of women's and trans rights activists' calls and being like, yeah, but what about men? Yeah, but what about men? Yeah, but what about men? These conversations need to be had. Maybe go and do something about that rather than using this to derail the conversation about women's and trans rights liberation. One day is all we are bloody asking for. But no, we must now bow to our new overlord, the Transwoman. Sick of this shit. Well, as your new overlord, all I'm gonna say is maybe get the fuck off of Mumsnet and maybe stop complaining about trans women wanting to be equal. All I've really had confirmed today from my scrolling is that Mumsnet is a den of toxic negativity towards trans people, and it's very much argued that what they're not doing is being anti-trans. What they're being is pro-children, pro-safe, pro-women, which is the defence that a lot of anti-trans people tend to use. You can defend this person without going against this person. International Women's Day, which was the context to this post, is for all women. Trans women, cis women, women of colour, trans women of colour, single women, women in a relationship, women living below the poverty line, women living above the poverty line. It's a day for women. I thought feminists were supposed to be campaigning for there not being one definition of woman. So why do they keep excluding people who don't fit their category of women? I think I'm going to leave it there, to be honest, because I don't really want to keep scrolling through Mumsnet. It's not a very positive place. And stay the hell away from anyone who just thinks that womanhood is defined by being born with a vagina. So from this woman to you guys, if you did enjoy this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, leave a like. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this video. Would you like to see more sort of things like this? What's your opinion on Mumsnet? That could be spicy. Subscribe if you haven't already, and as always, I have been Ruby Price, and I shall see you next time. Adios. Bye.